as a governor, I thought, please, I want to make sure that we have the ships that are required by our Navy.
You mentioned the Navy, for example, and that we have fewer ships than we did in 1916. Well, Governor, we also have fewer horses and bayonets.
Radical, violent extremists.
Bring them to justice, and that's exactly what we're going to do.
President Obama and Republican nominee Mitt Romney locked horns last night in their third and final presidential debate. Here to help us break down their performances, analyst John Tiene, normally a Republican analyst. We thank you for coming on board. Obviously, we didn't have your counterpart here from the Democratic Party, Uhura Williams. But let's talk about the debate last night. Obviously, lots to think about. Hard to imagine people are still on the fence in this election, given what we've heard through all three debates. But let me ask you your thoughts on last night.
Well, last night's debate was no clear winner. Barack Obama did what he needed to do, which was show that he was firm, defend his record. Romney did what he needed to do, which was beat him up a little bit and try to delineate where he would go. And I think for Romney, make people feel comfortable that he would be a reasonable, responsible, calming chief executive, and that people could feel safe with him at the helm of foreign policy. And I think both camps did what they needed to do, and now it's off to sprint for Election Day. And
we'll see what the voters had to say. A lot of the pundits suggest that the president had a firmer control of the issues, that he laid out very clearly where he stood on those issues, and pummeled Romney for shifting on different policies. Let me ask your thoughts on that.
Yeah, the president was in attack mode. I think he's, quite frankly, on the defensive. We look at some of the national polling. Ever since that first debate, Romney's been gaining momentum. And I think the president's trying to buttress against that. But if you notice, Romney didn't take the bait. This debate, he needed to show that he was presidential. He could not get upset, not get flustered. And he did that. He let the president go after him. And I think in some instances, the president did make some points. But in some instances, the president looked a little childish with trying to demean Romney and his positions.
And that leads me to my next question, because it appeared to me that Romney clearly was trying to take a more measured approach. We didn't see him as nearly as combative as we've seen him before. Good strategy?
He came in as front runner. You look at the recent Gallup poll. The likely voters, Romney's 52 to Obama's 45. So Romney's slowly gaining, particularly in some of these key states. So he came in and he's the leader in the race right now, at least from his campaign's perspective. And so they had to be more calm, less combative. This was a much less combative debate than the second debate.
Sure. Well, let me ask you, we're going to show a couple of clips and ask your thoughts on those. The focus, of course, was on foreign policy. Romney did his best to challenge the president's record, while Mr. Obama ridiculed Romney's assessment of the geopolitical landscape. Take a listen.
I'm glad that you recognize that al-Qaeda is a threat, because a few months ago, when you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. Not al-Qaeda, you said Russia. In the 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back, because the Cold War has been over for 20 years. But Governor, when it comes to our foreign policy, you seem to want to import the foreign policies of the 1980s, just like the social policies of the 1950s and the economic policies of the 1920s.
Attacking me is not an agenda. Attacking me is not talking about how we're going to deal with the challenges that exist in the Middle East and take advantage of the opportunity there and stem the tide of this violence. But I'll respond to a couple of things you mentioned. First of all, Russia, I indicated, is a geopolitical foe. Excuse me, it's a geopolitical foe. And I said in the same paragraph, I said, and Iran is the greatest national security threat we face. Russia does continue to battle us in the UN time and time again. I have clear eyes on this.
So let me ask you your thoughts. The body language alone suggested Mr. Romney was on top of that answer.
This is a perfect clip to demonstrate how this debate went. The president trying to defend his record, attacking. Romney calmly responding, delineating his position to show he's presidential. I mean, at the end of the day, Obama supporters, Romney supporters, they've made their decision. This is a battle for a small group of very undecided, disillusioned voters to try to get them to go left or to go right in these waning days of the campaign. I think, Romney maybe a little, I think his supporters would say he was a little bit too calm, maybe could have been a little feistier, but the president just was really on the defensive the whole night.
Well, obviously, he's had to be on the defensive these last two
Yeah.
debates. But did you get the impression at all that the president had a better handle on the issues?
Well, he better. He's been the president for 4 years. So he better have a handle on these issues and understand these issues. He tried to paint Romney as this, Reagan-esque 1980s kind of a figure. I don't think Romney let him do that. I think his supporters may have wanted him to be a little stronger. But this was, if I recall, the least viewed of all of the debates. Mm-hmm. The one that got the least amount of Twitter traffic and social media activity. So I think at this point, I think you look at all the polling, you look at all the pundits, this race is in the last 14 days. Both sides have made their decisions. The voters in both sides have made their decisions. Now it's a matter of get everybody out to vote. Mm-hmm. And if the polling continues to track, it appears to be tracking and breaking for Romney in these last couple of weeks. So as long as no one doesn't make any mistakes in the last couple of weeks, this is going to be a very interesting, very tight race.
And a very difficult time for Mr. Romney, I would imagine, because he has had to overcome some real gaffes that he's made that the president has tried to seize upon.
It
so
has.
far, so good for Mr. Romney, though.
But it appears that the voters have kind of, okay, everybody makes mistakes. Understand there are 23 million Americans who either are unemployed, underemployed, or have stopped looking for work.
Right.
I think these voters, those voters who really believed in Barack Obama 4 years ago and now feel disappointed, disillusioned, these are the ones that are going to decide this election.
Still be on the fence. Let's talk about some more of the video. We'll show another clip. President Obama took every opportunity, as we talked about earlier, to point out Mr. Romney's shifting policy stance, which Romney himself seemed to play into.
I congratulate him on taking out Osama bin Laden and going after the leadership in al-Qaeda. But we can't kill our way out of this mess. We're going to have to put in place a very comprehensive and robust strategy to help the world of Islam and other parts of the world reject this radical, violent extremism, which is, it's certainly not on the run. My strategy is pretty straightforward, which is to go after the bad guys, to make sure we do our very best to interrupt them, to kill them, to take them out of the picture. But
So on the one hand, we can't kill our way out of the mess.
That's right.
The other side, a few minutes later, he says, well, we're going to go kill them. Do you think that registers or not?
Well, Romney had to, on foreign policy, these two individuals are not that far apart. Interestingly enough, Obama really adopted a lot of the Bush foreign policy strategy. So they're not that far apart. So I think what Romney's trying to do is demonstrate to people that he is going to be strong, but he's not going to go out there and try to get engaged in additional wars.
But you don't think that this illustrates the back and forth that the president has tried to show on not just the foreign policy issue, on the abortion issue, on education issues, things that Romney has been all over the map?
Yeah, but those aren't economic issues. And quite frankly, they're social issues and they land up on the periphery. In this kind of an election, this is going to be about the economy. It's going to be about all those people out of work and who's going to put me back to work.
Right.
And on foreign policy, here's Romney saying, listen, we're not necessarily going to be able to kill our way out of this. There has to be other strategies. On the other hand, he's saying, listen, if we find somebody who's really an enemy of our nation, I'm not going to hesitate to take him out.
If he'd said that, we wouldn't be having this discussion.
Well, but I think it's all parsing of words. It's, remember, the voting public, there is such a spectrum of how people interpret what's said.
Certainly.
So there's no black and white, there's just a lot of gray.
Yeah. Let me ask you, we're going to show you one other clip and address something you mentioned about Romney bringing this back to the economy.
Right.
Mr. Romney did try to redirect the conversation right to the economy, even as he talked about what was happening in China.
Central question at this point is going to be who's going to be credible to all parties involved. And they can look at my track record, whether it's Iran sanctions, whether it's dealing with counterterrorism, whether it's supporting democracy, whether it's supporting women's rights, whether it's supporting religious minorities, and they can say that the President of the United States and the United States of America has stood on the right side of history.
Well, there was apparently, why we missed out, Mr. Romney was talking about, well, look, we've got all these jobs going overseas. Right. We need to develop jobs here. He made actually a very compelling argument, which I wish we had seen there, a very compelling argument for why the economy isn't working. He talked against cutting the military at a point where he thinks we need to expand it. And I guess the question voters, my question to you is, do you think that resonates with voters? When we talk about, when the economy is bad as it is, and we're talking about foreign policy, he brings it back to the economy. Does that work for him?
I think so. I mean, I think last appearance I said that they're going to find a way to get the economy and domestic issues back into this debate. And they did. They talked about America's competitiveness around the world, brought it right back to the economy. At the end of the day, if people feel that their candidate can keep them safe around the world but build the economy at home, that's what they're looking for. And I think that's what both candidates did last night. Said, listen, you know, Barack Obama said, I'm strong, I've got a record, look what I've done. Romney said, questioned it, maybe it hasn't been consistent, maybe you haven't been strong enough against China. And remember these battleground states, Ohio, Colorado, West Virginia, Florida. There are a lot of voters there that feel that their jobs were taken away and shipped to China, and they blame Obama for that. And now they're looking for, well, you're going to help me. Who's going to help me?
How much do you think the Detroit issue weighs in? You know, the president's made a big hay about Romney saying, well, you said let Detroit go belly up.
Well, Obama's already got Michigan. It's going to go to Obama.
But do you think that resonates in those other states is the question?
No, I don't. Because at the end of the day, folks who aren't working in the auto industry, it's, the government's going to come bail out my company? How come the government didn't come bail out my company? It shut and I lost my job. How come you just did that deal for them?
Gotcha.
So, you know, anybody who's out of work is saying, well, how come me? What about me?
Yeah. Well, you raise a good point. We'll see what happens. Always a pleasure to have you aboard,
good to see
John.
you again.
Thanks much.